The desert had a way of remembering men long after men tried to forget themselves, and Eli McRae knew that better than anyone. He had ridden away from blood-soaked trails and burning homesteads 20 years earlier, hung his guns on a wall that gathered dust, and told himself the Wild West was finished with him. But the land never agreed. Each dawn that cracked open over the Arizona territory whispered his name through sagebrush and sand, reminding him that a retired cowboy was still a cowboy when the world grew. Cruel enough, Eli was gray-bearded now, shoulders bowed not by age but by memory, living alone on a spread most men would call empty, but which he called quiet enough to sleep. That peace shattered the day he rode into Red Mesa and saw two Apache girls chained outside a trading post like livestock, their wrists bruised, their eyes defiant, their silence louder than gunfire. The men laughing nearby spoke of ownership and profit, of how war had made women into currency, and something old and dangerous woke inside Eli's chest. He told himself he was only there for supplies, that it was none of his business, that the world had moved on from justice. But the land listened, and it knew he was lying. The traitor named Price had the smile of a snake and the confidence of a man, protected by other men's fear. He bragged openly that the girls were captured after a skirmish, that they would fetch a fine sum down south, and that anyone with coin could claim them. Eli felt his hands curl slowly, the way they used to before a fight, and he hated himself for how natural it felt. He asked the price in a voice as flat as desert stone, pretending indifference while his pulse hammered. Price named a number meant to discourage, a number soaked in greed. Eli didn't blink. He counted out the money with hands that had once counted bullets, not bills. The crowd quieted, sensing something heavier than commerce passing between them. When the chains were unlocked, the girls didn't move. They looked at Eli like cornered wolves, expecting another kind of cage. He told them gently that they were free, that they could go wherever they wished. But freedom is a word that sounds like a lie when it has been stolen too often. One of them spat in the dust, not at him, but at the world. And Eli realized then that buying them was only the beginning of a debt, far larger than money. He rode them out of Red Mesa before trouble could gather momentum, the sun dropping low and painting the desert in blood-orange light. He kept his distance, riding ahead, leaving them room to breathe, because he understood pride and fear well enough to know it couldn't be rushed. That night, camped beneath a sky heavy with stars, the girls finally spoke. The older one called herself Ayanna, her voice steady but edged with pain, while the younger, Naya, watched everything like a hawk ready to flee. They asked why he had done it. Eli answered truthfully, because he could not ride past chains anymore. He told them he expected nothing, that they were free to leave at dawn. Ayanna laughed softly, a sound cracked by bitterness, and said freedom was not a road you could simply step onto barefoot. Raiders, bounty hunters, and soldiers stalked Apache women like prey. Leaving alone was just another way to die. Eli listened, really listened, and for the first time in years, he felt like the land had stopped accusing him and started watching instead. Days turned into weeks as they traveled north toward Eli's ranch, not because he asked, but because the world left them little choice. Along the trail, Eli saw who the girls truly were when no one was watching. Ayanna's quiet leadership, the way she tended wounds and read the land as if it spoke directly to her. Naya's sharp humor, her fierce protectiveness that masked deep terror. They were not broken. They were bent, and bending is how things survive storms. Trouble found them anyway. A gang of former cavalry deserters tried to take the girls by force one night, assuming an old man would fold. They were wrong. Eli moved like the ghost of his younger self, fast and terrible, and when the smoke cleared, the girls saw not a savior, but a man willing to stand between them and hell without asking permission. That night, something shifted. Trust, thin as a spider's thread, began to weave itself. At the ranch, Eli offered them horses, supplies, and a choice. Stay until they were ready to go, or go now with his blessing. They stayed, not because of walls or promises, but because for the first time since their capture, the air didn't taste like fear. Life settled into a strange rhythm. They shared meals, shared silence, shared stories. Eli spoke of the war, of mistakes that haunted him, of men he failed to save. Ayanna spoke of her people, of songs meant to call courage back into frightened hearts. Naya began to laugh again, real laughter that startled even her. What Eli didn't speak of was the growing awareness that his life, once empty and waiting for death, was filling with something dangerously close to hope. But the West never allowed peace without payment. Word spread that Price wanted his money back, that the deserters had friends, that an old cowboy was harboring stolen property. Eli knew what was coming before the dust rose on the horizon. He prepared the ranch not as a fortress, but as a stand. Ayanna and Naya refused to run. They said if chains came again, they would break them together or die free. When the men arrived, armed and confident, they found not victims, but a family already forged by fire. The fight was brutal and brief. When it ended, the desert was quiet once more, and the sun rose on a truth none of them could deny. They were bound now, not by purchase, not by fear, but by choice. Eli realized then that freedom was not something he had bought. It was something they had built together, plank by plank, wound by wound. And as he looked at Ayanna and Naya standing unbroken in the morning light, he understood that his lonely ride was over, whether the world approved or not. If you're feeling the weight of this journey and want to see where it leads, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because this Wild West story is only beginning, and Chapter 2 will take you deeper into love, loyalty, and a destiny no one could have predicted. The desert after violence always felt deceptively calm, as if the land itself held its breath to see what kind of men and women would rise from the ashes. And in the days following the attack on Eli McRae's ranch, that calm pressed heavy on all three of them. The bodies were buried, the blood washed from the hard earth, but none of them were the same people who had woken up before the dust of approaching riders had darkened the horizon. Eli moved slower now, not from injury but from the growing awareness that his choices had woven lives together in ways no bullet ever could. Ayanna watched him with eyes that saw far more than he said, understanding that the man who had once believed himself finished was now standing at the beginning of something far more dangerous than gunfire, belonging. Naya, once restless and ready to flee at every sound, began to move through the ranch as if it were hers too, repairing fences, tending horses, humming old songs that mixed strangely but beautifully with the creak of leather and the whisper of wind through grass. Word spread fast in the territory, as it always did, and not all of it was kind. Some called Eli a fool for inviting trouble, others a criminal for sheltering Apache women, but a few, the quiet ones who knew the cost of loneliness, saw something braver than gunplay taking root. Traders began stopping by again, cautiously at first, then with respect, and no one spoke of chains anymore. Ayanna began trading herbs and healing knowledge with nearby settlers, her reputation growing until people rode miles just to seek her counsel. Naya learned to shoot not out of fear, but confidence, laughing when she hit her mark and teasing Eli when he missed. And somewhere between shared meals and long talks beneath starlit skies, something deeper than gratitude began to settle between them all. Eli fought it at first. He told himself he was an old man, clinging to kindness, because it felt better than dying alone. He told himself the warmth in his chest was nothing more than relief that they were safe. But the West had stripped him of the luxury of lying to himself long ago. He saw it in the way Ayanna's presence steadied him, in how her calm strength filled the spaces his regrets had hollowed out. He felt it in Naya's fierce loyalty, in the way her laughter chased shadows from corners he hadn't known were still dark. This wasn't ownership. This wasn't debt. This was choice, freely made, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. The turning point came when a government envoy rode in with papers and threats disguised as law. He spoke of reservations, of forced relocation, of how Apache women without protection would soon be taken for their own good. Eli listened quietly, then tore the paper in half and told the man to leave. That night, the three of them sat by the fire, knowing the world beyond the ranch would never stop pushing. Ayanna spoke first, her voice steady, saying that survival alone was no longer enough. She wanted a life that could not be taken by decree. Naya nodded, eyes fierce, saying she would never run again. They looked at Eli not as a rescuer, but as a man standing at the same crossroads. What followed was not a sudden confession, not a dramatic declaration, but a slow, honest conversation that lasted until dawn. They spoke of fear, of loss, of what love meant in a world that punished it. Eli told them he would never cage them, never claim them as anything but equals. Ayanna spoke of Apache ways, of bonds built on mutual respect and shared strength. Naya spoke of wanting roots deep enough no one could pull them out. When the sun rose, the choice was clear, not because it was easy, but because it was true. They would face the future together, openly, defiantly, as family. The marriage that followed was not recognized by courts or churches, but it was witnessed by the land, by the people who mattered, and by hearts that had learned the value of standing unbroken. It was simple, powerful, and honest. There were no chains, no contracts of ownership, only vows spoken with eyes that understood the cost of keeping them. Together, they built something rare on the frontier, a home forged not by conquest, but by consent and courage. Seasons passed, the ranch thrived. Children would one day run across that land, knowing stories not of captivity, but of resilience and choice. Eli McRae, once a retired cowboy waiting quietly for the end, became something far more enduring, a man redeemed not by violence, but by love that refused to be owned or silenced. Ayanna and Naya, once treated as spoils of war, became pillars of a life no one could take from them. And the Wild West, cruel and unforgiving as it was, bore witness to a truth stronger than any gun. Freedom is not bought, it is chosen, and sometimes, against all odds, it becomes love. If this story moved you, if you believe powerful tales like this deserve to live on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps these untold Wild West legends alive, and many more unforgettable stories are waiting just beyond the horizon.
Subscribe to my channel.